life under Batista, if you were to listen to the rhetoric and propaganda of the Castro dictatorship, was horrendous unless you were one of the cronies of Batista, and it was no good. It was whatever poor people, rich people, absolutely. But life was actually not that bad. There was privilege really around the board.
I have heard many stories from people in Cuba, old people in Cuba that say there were people here in the United States that used to go weekend vacation in Cuba. It was so easy to go from the United States to Cuba. The people in Cuba actually suffering all these conflict, the government doesn't feel anything because they still have the biggest houses and the money and every privilege that can exist in Earth. They have it. Now the people is suffering all the crisis that is going on with food, with clothing, with transportation, housing, everything that you can imagine.
They have an information and a technology blockade that's imposed from within. The average Cuban knows nothing about what's going on as well. Every news source in Cuba is state-run. What they see and what they know is exactly what Castro wants them to know. Most Cubans are not able to travel. For my husband to come here, we had to literally sneak him out of the country. We can't bring his family here to visit their grandson. So it is an absolute information black hole. They do not know what's going on in the world. And if they did, they would certainly rise up because Cubans are smart and proud people. But Castro has just kept them, besides in the dark, just really, afraid.
I think it's good that Obama tried to do this. I think the Cuban government will try to avoid this change because it's not convenient for the power to get the information to Cuban people. But I think it won't be possible for them to stop it once Cuban people have the information.
And from the U.S. perspective, for the average U.S. American, it's not, in all fairness, it's not going to mean that much. I think the average American doesn't even necessarily realize that we have an embargo on Cuba. They don't, I know Americans that I've met that it embarrasses me to say don't know what language they speak in Cuba, don't know where Cuba is. We've been in the dark about a country, that is 90 miles from U.S. shore. And while I think that for people who have a memory of Cuba or people who were fans of I Love Lucy or like music or something like that, I think that there are people who, if nothing else, will have a part of culture that's been really denied us. But I think that it's mostly what it's going to mean for Cubans is reuniting family. There is not a Cuban you can find in Havana or in the rest of the island that does not have somebody in the U.S. It's just, families have been separated by this, and grandparents that can't meet their grandchildren, parents separated from their children who come here, send their children here. In the 60s, there were literally over 14,000 children under the age of 12 that were sent alone out of the country by their parents because that's how scared they were. And so it's everything. It's reunification. It's the entry into the century. Everything.
And
but the idea of hope, the word hope in Cuba just has so little